Logicians, today, or in this video, I'm going to be going over a few of the proofs in Chapter 7, Section 1, Exercises 3 in Hurley's Intro to Logic. I'll just be going over 4 proofs every 5 problems. So I got my rules down here in the bottom right, the only 4 rules we were given in 7.1. And I'll just start in with the proofs here. So for the first proof, I just have 2 lines. So first line, if not W, then if not W, then if X, then W. And on the second line, I'm given not W. And what I'm trying to get is not X. So how am I going to get there? Well, the only place I see X is in here, so I'm going to have to break this line down a lot before I even get close to getting tilde X. So the good news is, as far as a starting point, we only have 2 lines. All of our rules work on 2 lines that we were given. So we know that we're going to be using some rule on lines 1 and 2 together to get a third line. So then we need to ask ourselves, what rule can we use? Well, to do that, we need to look at the main operator. The main operator here is a horseshoe. So that we rule out disjunctive syllogism. We're left with modus ponens, modus tollens, and hypothetical syllogism. On one line, we don't have a horseshoe, so that rules out hypothetical syllogism, because to use that, we would need both lines to have horseshoes. So that leaves MP or MT. So then we need to see, are we like MP? Do we have everything before the horseshoe and then can derive everything after the horseshoe? Or do we have a negation of what comes after the horseshoe and can get the negation of what comes before the horseshoe? Well, here we're given a big conditional statement on line 1. And on line 2, we have the antecedent for line 1. So with MP, we can get what comes after the horseshoe. So that will leave us with where can I put this so it's not intrusive? About right there. So we can get tilde W, horseshoe, open parenthesis, X, horseshoe, W. And how did we do that? We did 1, 2, M, P. All right, so far so good. We're starting to break down that first line a little bit. Now we need to do it a little bit more. So like I said, doing these proofs, a good way to proceed is, now that you have a new piece of evidence, see how that fits in with the other pieces of evidence to try to get you to your conclusion. So what can we use line 3 with? We can do the same thing we did to 1 and 2. We can do the same thing to 2 and 3. That is, use MP again. So on line 2, we have the antecedent of line 3. So what can we get on line 4? We can get the consequent of line 3. So X, horseshoe, W. And the way we did that was 2, 3, MP again. All right, so now we have X horseshoe W, and we're trying to get tilde X. So we're trying to figure out some way to get from here to here. So how can we get from X, if X then W, to not X? Well, MT tells us that if we have a conditional statement and if we have the negation of the consequent, we can get the negation of the antecedent. And that would be, the antecedent here is X, so if we could get tilde X if we had the negation of the consequent, which is tilde W. Do we have tilde W? We see we do on line 2. And if that doesn't make sense, you can just look at line 4 and ask yourself, what line can I use with line 4? And that would be line 2. So we can get tilde x, and the way we did that is 2 for mt. So we had if x then w, and on line 2 not w, and if not w but the horseshoe is true, then so if w is false but the horseshoe is true, then x also has to be false. So that's what we did on line 5 there. And now that we have our the conclusion that we were looking to on the line, and we justified all our steps, we've completed the proof. So then let's skip down to number 10. So number 10 in the text goes like this: if n, then if j, then p, and if j, then if j, then p, then if n, then j, and n. And what we're trying to get to is p. So what we're going to need to do is break this line down somehow to get to that p there, or we also have a p here. They're going to be, we're going to need to break this down somehow. So I'm not exactly sure how to go about this. So let's, first of all, let's make sure I copied it right. Yep. All right. So let's just start doing stuff and see how it works out. So on line 3, we have n. And up here we have if n, then j horseshoe p. So using modus ponens, we can derive the consequent from 1 and 3 to get j horseshoe p. That's 1, 3, m, p. All right, now what can we do with j horseshoe p? That's the part I was wondering if I copied correctly. 1 second. Yeah, we are going for p. Okay, so now that we have j horseshoe p, on line 2 we can do mp again with 2 and 4, because now that we have this new information, j horseshoe p, we want to ask what can we use that with. We have no rule that allows us, given a consequent, to derive the antecedent. No rule tells us we can do that, but we do have a rule that tells us if we have the antecedent, we can get the consequent. So we can get n horseshoe j on a line by itself. And we did that with 2, 4, and p. Now that we have n horseshoe j, what can we do with that? Well, now we could go a couple different ways with this. We could do a hypothetical syllogism with 4 and 5. You'll see on 5 we have if n then j, and on 4 we have if j then p. So we could get if n then p. That would be a useful step. The other way we can go about this is on line 5 we have if n then j, and on line 3 we have n, so we could just do another mp. Either way will get us to p eventually. Let's do the hypothetical syllogism route, just because we haven't done that yet in this homework. So hypothetical syllogism, looking at it down here in the bottom right, it tells us if we have if p then q, and if we have if q then r, then we can cancel out those q's and we'll be left with p and r. So cancel out the parts that are the same, carry down the parts that are different. So here on line 5 we have if n then j, and on 4 we have if j then p. So we can cut out the j, cut out the middleman, and be left with if n then p. And the way we did that was 4, 5, HS. We cut out the j's, we carried the n down, carried the p down. That's the way hypothetical syllogism works. And now we have if n then p, and what we're trying to get to is p. So how can we get there? Well, on 6 we have if n then p, and on 3 we have n. And if we know if n then p, and we know n, then we know that p follows. So and the way we got there was 3, 6, and p. Now again, there was a way to do this without hypothetical syllogism that was completely valid, and you would get full 100% on the test if you did it that other way. You could have done 3, 5 MP, and then that would have gotten you J, and then you would do 4, 6 MP, and that would have got you P. So either way, it's this proof is going to have 4 steps and going to get you to P. So as long as you use valid argument forms, as long as you use the steps that were given, the rules that were given to get to the end, it doesn't matter how many steps you do, nor does it matter what steps you do, as long as they are valid applications of these rules. All right. So let's go down to 15. For 15, we're given if not J, then if not A, then if D, then A. J or not A, not J, and what we're trying to get to is not D. So let's look for the conclusion in the premises. We see D only appears in this first premise. It appears as the antecedent to a conditional statement. So if we had the negation of the consequent, if we could get tilde A, we could get tilde D using modus tollens. Also, if we had tilde A, we could get this hypothetical, this conditional statement by itself. But before that, we would need tilde J. Luckily, we have tilde J, so we have all the tools here. We just need to figure out how the pieces work together. So let's just start doing stuff that fits. 2 ways we could start here. We could start with lines 2 and 3 to do a disjunctive syllogism to get tilde A, but it's not immediately clear why we need that. The other lines that go together are 1 and 3. Note line 1, the main operator there is the horseshoe, and what's to the left of the horseshoe is tilde J. That's what we have on line 3. MP tells us if we're given a conditional statement and given what comes to the left of the conditional statement, the left of the horseshoe, then we can get what comes to the right of the horseshoe. So what can we get? We can get all this on this line. And now that we have it on line by itself, we don't need these brackets because they're not doing any work. How did we do that? We did line 1 and 3. 1, 3, and P. You'll see modus ponens is a very popular step in all these proofs. All right, now that we have tilde A, horseshoe D, horseshoe A, one of the tips I've given you is see if you can use the new line with any of the other lines. And so far we can't. This doesn't work with lines 1, 2, or 3 as they are. What it would work with is so let's look at this line and see what we might need if we were going to use this line. One thing we could do is if we had a tilde A, then we'd have what's to the left of the horseshoe, and we could get what comes to the right of the horseshoe on a line by itself. Otherwise, if we had the negation of the consequent, then modus tollens tells us we could get the negation of the antecedent. But we don't have the negation of the consequent anywhere, nothing that even looks like it. That would have to be tilde open parenthesis D horseshoe A, and we just don't have that. But what we do have somewhere is tilde A. So we see that on line 2. So how can we get tilde A by itself? Well, the main operator here is a wedge, and tilde A comes after the wedge. So we'll look at a rule that deals with wedges. Disjunctive syllogism tells us that if we have a wedge, so P or Q, and if we have the negation of the first disjunct, not P, then we can get the second part by itself, Q. So look at lines 2 and 3 here. Here we have J or not A. And then on line 3, we have not J. So what can we get? Well, with disjunctive syllogism, if we have the negation of everything that comes before the wedge, we can get everything that comes after the wedge. So everything that comes after the wedge is tilde A. So let's do tilde A. And that was 2, 3. Disjunctive syllogism. All right, now that we got ourselves tilde A, now these lines immediately jump out to us as candidates for MP. So we get D horseshoe A, and that's because we had a conditional statement here, and here we have everything to the left of the horseshoe, so MP tells us we can get everything to the right of the horseshoe, that's D horseshoe A, and we can drop the parentheses because they're no longer useful. So 4, 5, MP. All right, now we can go back to our what can we do with this new piece of evidence. We should also constantly look back to the conclusion to make sure we're making progress towards the conclusion. The conclusion that we're looking for here is tilde D. We have D horseshoe A. So if we could get tilde A somewhere, then MT would allow us to get tilde D, the negation. So if we have the negation of everything that comes to the right of the horseshoe, comes to the right of horseshoe is A. So if we had tilde A, then MT tells us we could get the negation of what comes to the left. The negation, what comes to the left is D, so we could get not D. In fact, on lines 5 and 6, we have a perfect candidate for modus tollens here, MT, because we have the conditional statement, we have the negation of the consequent, so we can get the negation of the antecedent. And we did that with 5, 6, MT. And we got the conclusion we were looking for. We justified all our steps along the way. We're done with the proof. All right, so one more in this homework review. So this is number 20. 20 tells us if H, then if not E, then if C, then not D. If not D, then E, E or H. And we're also given not E, and what we're trying to get is not C. So where do we find this? Let's look for the conclusion in the premises. The only place we see a C is here. It's the antecedent of a conditional statement, so we're probably going to use modus tollens. At least that would be one way to do it. One thing we also see here, we see a couple conditional statements here. If C, then not D, and if not D, then E. So maybe we could suspect a hypothetical syllogism where we cut out the middleman and go if C, then E. That might be a step we could take. There's a couple different ways you can do this proof as well. But one thing we know for sure is we're going to need to break down this line. This line, as is not useful to us. We're going to need to break it down to at least here, and then we can maybe get the C out of there with hopefully a tilde in front of it. So let's just start working this problem and see where it might lead us. All right, so here, what lines can work together? There's really only two initially. Here we have on line 3, if we have either E or H, and on line 4, not E. So if this wedge is going to be true, then H is going to have to be the case. And how do we know that? Well, we did 3, 4, and disjunctive syllogism is the rule we use with wedges as of right now. So either E or F, H, not E, therefore H must be the case. And now that we have H, let's look at how that might be useful to us. That's really useful to us because here it's the antecedent of a conditional statement. And our favorite first rule, MP, tells us if we have what comes to the left of the horseshoe, we can get what comes to the right. So we'll go ahead and copy that down on line 6. And now we don't need the outermost brackets because they're no longer doing any work. So how do we do that? We did 1, 5, and all right, so now how is this line useful? What else does it go with? Well, we see line 4, we have not E, and on line 6 we have if not E, then C horseshoe tilde D. So we can go ahead and copy down C horseshoe tilde D. Because we have on line 4 everything that comes to the left of the horseshoe on line 6, MP tells us therefore we can get everything that comes to the right on the next line. So the way we did that was 4, 6, MP again. All right, so now there are a couple different ways you can go. One way you could go here, well, let's look at our new line. C horseshoe tilde D. What's the most elegant way to do this? What can we use with this? Here on 7 we have C horseshoe D, and on 2 we have C horseshoe tilde D on line 7, and on 2 we have tilde D horseshoe E. HS tells us if we have two conditional statements and the consequent of one is the same as the antecedent of another, then we can cut out those same parts, carry down the rest, and that's what we'll be left with. So let's go ahead and do it that way. So we have if C, then tilde D, if tilde D, then E. So we get if C, then E. Cutting out the tilde D's, cutting out the middleman from the equation there. So how do we do that? 2, 7, hypothetical syllogism. Oops. All right, so now what we're trying to get is tilde C. There we have it up there, and what we have here is C. MT tells us we can get the negation of the antecedent as long as we have the negation of the consequent to work with. So the consequent here is tilde E. And on line, the consequent is E, and on line 4 we have tilde E, so we can do this. We can get tilde C, and how can we do that? With 4 and 8 MT. Good, so that's one way you could do it. Let me briefly show you the other way you could have done this. The other way would be, so we'd start on line 7, you'd have if C, then tilde D. You could do MT on 2 and 4 to get yourself tilde tilde D. And that would be, whoops, we don't know. D. Oh, don't correct that. Space it out. Tilde. Tilde. D. And we could get that from 2, 4, 2, 4, MT. I'm just going to put MT here. You'll know it was 2 and 4. And then number 9. Now that we have tilde tilde D, we could do 7, 8 MT again, and we would end up with tilde C. and that would be 7, our new 7, or sorry, our old 7 and our new 8 NT. So 2 different ways to do it. Either way is completely legitimate and would get you full points. All right, so that's all the homework we'll be reviewing for today. Let me know if you have any questions on other proofs via email. I can quickly respond with the steps, and if you still have questions, we can set up a time to talk about it. All right, thanks for watching this. Hopefully the homework is going well. Remember, the way you learn this is not by watching me do it. The way you learn it and the way it sticks and what will be useful for the test is if you're keeping up with the homework. So make sure you're keeping up with the homework. And if you're watching this video, you probably are. All right, I'll see you next time.